Hi everyone. This video is going to cover forms in HTML. Forms are one of the most difficult things you can do while still staying within the basics of HTML, which is why this is the last of the Learn HTML videos. To start with, I'd like to explain the difference between client-side and server-side regarding forms. So every form needs to have both an HTML form that will display the form to users on the client side. This means within the browser, and users will fill out the form as you've structured it with HTML. However, it also needs a server-side script that processes and handles the information that users input. And this is usually done with PHP, but it can also be done with other scripting languages. And this is a file that exists on the server that will process the information provided by users through the HTML form. And without both of these components, a form is not going to work properly. Forms are created with the form element. And the form element has two attribute value pairs that you need to add to it. The first is action equals. And action equals is going to point to the server-side script that will handle the information. So if it, for instance, is contactform.php, it will point there. The other is method equals. And for most forms, you're going to want to use post because post will handle user data securely. The other method is get, but it's not really used for things like contact forms. So you should generally use post. There are four general types of form fields, and those are input, text area, select, and button. Input is the most versatile and common of these, so I'm going to start by going over input. Input is always accompanied by a type equals attribute. And within this type equals attribute, the value will specify what type of input this is. So some common ones include text for any kind of short answer text, checkbox for a checkbox such as a multiple choice, multiple select, radio for any kind of radio buttons, single choice, multiple select, email, which validates based on email addresses, tel for telephone numbers, number for a specific number, range for range of numbers, password for any kind of password input, file, time, date, color. All of these are valid input types. The most common ones you're going to use, though, are text, checkbox, and radio. Those are definitely the most common. Input is a unary tag, meaning that you're going to have input and then whatever attributes and values, and then the trailing slash at the end. Text area is going to handle any kind of large blocks of text entry, such as several paragraphs like in an essay or an email body. Select is used only for drop-down menus, and select comes with options, which are done with the option element. So we can have option number 1, option number 2, etc. And then as you see, it pulls out a drop-down with those options. Button is handled for any kind of button, such as a submit button, and button allows you to have content within it. You can also you can put text, but you can also put images within button. You can also do buttons with input type equals button, but that does not allow for any kind of content inside of it because it's a unary tag. Button allows for you to put content inside of it. It does always require a type, and the general two types you're going to use are submit and button. Button for generic buttons, and submit for any kind of submit button. With any form field, you can add what's called a label, and a label allows you to provide for users to tell them what they need to do with a particular field. So you see over here in the client side what people would see in their browser. All of these just enter the field. There's no kind of instructions or tags, and that's what labels are for. And these are done with the label element, and if you would like it to appear after the input, you do that after, before. The label is going to contain whatever you want in terms of instructions. So I would do something like pick a color and put that within there. These need to be paired up, though, for semantic reasons, and that's done by specifying a name on the individual inputs. So just pick a color, and then on the label, it's going to be a for equals attribute, and you're going to link them by having this name on the input and this label, this for on the label, be identical. So that means that this label gets linked semantically with the actual input. And this can be done with text areas, selects, and buttons as well, although generally you won't need to label a button. There are a few other attributes and values that can go along with form fields. So one that's really useful to do is what's called autofocus, and that will specify to the browser to automatically start the user with their cursor in that area. So if you have the text area set to autofocus and users just start typing once they enter the page, that typing will appear in the text area. Generally, you're going to want the first question autofocused, which in most cases, that's going to be the one that automatically autofocuses. So it's not that important to know how to autofocus, but it is a useful thing to be able to do in some contexts. You can also do placeholder equals and then give it a value, and the value will show up as placeholder text kind of grayed out in that area. You see that placeholder text over in this text area right here. For anything regarding options or radio buttons, checkboxes, things like that, you can use the checked attribute, and that will select which of the options is going to be checked. So if I was doing this pick a color instead as this, I can set checked and it will automatically be checked. You also need to know how to work with the value equals attribute, and this attribute specifies different things depending on the type of input. For buttons, it's going to provide the text on the button. For any kind of text box, such as an input of type text, value is going to do the starting text. You see how that text box starts with some text in it, and that's done through value. And for any other things like checkboxes, value is going to be what the form submits over to the script on the server side. Is if somebody checks this box, that's going to send over the value of blue to the script on the other side. That brings me around to the final thing with forms, which is validation. Form validation should be handled on both sides, both client side and server side. And on the client side, that's done with the required attribute. So any type of input with something like email or tell will do some validation, but you can require users input a particular thing with the required attribute. And like checked and autofocus, this is an attribute that does not have a value with it, but it does specify this is required before users can submit their particular form. And if they don't fill out that particular thing, when they click to submit, it's going to tell them they need to fill out that thing. That's on the client side. The server side validation is much more complicated, and since these videos are just about HTML, I am not going to be covering that here. That covers forms in HTML and all of the basics of HTML between all of these Learn HTML videos. Thanks for watching.